All right. How's it going? It's Mick Red. We're going to go over a little bit of something new for me, a little more political. I just saw a new um, post about Joe Jorgensen on Facebook, and I kind of wanted to go over her as a candidate, kind of give my opinions and see what the fuck is going on with this libertarian candidate and what she actually means for the people if she were to actually get elected, what it is that she would do. So we're going to go ahead and go over a couple of things here. What I have here, what I've pulled up is JoJo's her campaign website, and we've got a few categories here for things that she supports and what her platform is. But just for like the overview, the bullet points that she gives right here at the front, we've got over $23 trillion in debt, $1 trillion deficits, plus trillions more in unfunded liabilities. Um, I won't disagree with that. Our spending in this country is ridiculous. We don't manage our money, especially under a Republican administration. And yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with her on that. Stop involvement in expensive and deadly foreign wars. I also agree with that. There's no reason why we've been in the Middle East for, almost 20 years at this point, especially with the release of the Afghanistan papers earlier this year or late last year, basically stating that after about the first 6 months of the Afghanistan war, even the brass didn't know why we were still in that country. Yet here we are 20 years later, and we are still in Afghanistan and Iraq, not to mention all of the other military installations that we have across the world. Um, why are we doing this? So I agree with her on that. Skyrocketing healthcare costs. Yes, we need to do something about healthcare. I advocate for a single payer system. Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All is about as close as any politician has come to as far as uh, policy decisions for what they think this country should be going towards for healthcare, which I agree with. Um, Highest imprisonment rate in the world, even higher among racial minorities and the poor. This is very accurate. There are a lot of reasons why racial minorities, most poignantly, African American people, black people, are incarcerated at much higher rates than any other ethnic group in our country. And the poor, I mean, that's kind of redundant at that point. There are plenty of socioeconomic reasons as to why people of color in this country have been um, basically kept under the thumb of people who look like me. Um, and we do have the highest imprisonment rate in the world. We pride ourselves on being a free country, yet China, which has a um, much higher population than us, has a lower per capita imprisonment rate than America does. A broken retirement system, unable to pay promised benefits. Yeah, I've been told my entire life that, and I'm 28 years old, I've been told my entire life that Social Security will not last until I'm able to take advantage of it. And yet I'm paying into it. So I agree with her on that. Her website, everything that I've seen so far on her website are things that I agree with. These are very blasé, very overarching ideals that's like, well, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. I mean, maybe her solutions will line up with that, but we'll see. Tariffs that are destroying markets for American farmers. Yes, the current administration has placed tariffs on foreign nations, like I know one specifically on soybeans, that are wreaking havoc on our agricultural industry in this country. So something should be done about that. I wonder what she has to say about that. An endless immigration crisis. Hmm. I mean, it depends on what you mean by that, but I guess sure. In a way, I agree. We do have an endless immigration crisis. There's no reason why our immigration into this country should be as stringent as it is. There's no reason why we should be trying our hardest, it seems, to keep people who are not white out of this country. They boost our economy. They are far less likely to commit crimes as compared to naturalized citizens, especially white people. I mean, we do make up the majority of the population, but even per capita, they make up a significantly smaller portion of the crime in our country as compared to people who look like me. So I don't see why our country is trying so hard to keep these people out. But we'll see what she has to say on that. Big government mandates and programs created these problems. Ooh. To solve them, we need to make government smaller, much, much smaller. All right, you're starting to lose me there, but okay. I do believe that certain portions of our government, such as law enforcement and the military, should be made smaller. Our law enforcement is given far too many responsibilities in this country, and they have a bloated budget, which allows them to buy all of this militarized equipment that they simply do not need for the job that they are required to do. I understand that we do need specialized teams such as the SWAT team. I understand that we do need violent crime response units, but I don't believe that your average cop should be handling things like wellness checks. That's where we see multiple deaths at the hands of police officers every single year. They don't need to be handling mental health crises. Again, you see plenty of abuse and murders by law enforcement officers handling these mental health crises that these people are having. And they're also the biggest bullies to the most vulnerable people in our country, which would be the homeless people. Also, I mean, people of color, but that's kind of a given if you've been following anything related to the public discourse in these last weeks or months. And military, like I said, we have military bases all around the world that we don't really need. And I mean, why are we there? Why are we spending trillions of dollars a year to have military bases in Africa and in the South Pacific and in the Middle East? Why are we still in Iraq? Why are we still in Afghanistan after 20 years? It doesn't make sense. So I agree. Yeah. Certain portions of our government should be made smaller, but I have a feeling, now this is just an inkling, but I have a feeling that we're going to disagree on what portions of the government she feels need to be made smaller. So let's take a look at this. Government spending and deficits and debt. As president, I will use my constitutional authority to block any new borrowing. I mean, we are part of a global economy at this point. I do believe that we do need to reduce the deficit and bring it to sort of an equilibrium, much in the same way that President Clinton did in the 90s. But we are part of a global economy. Buying and selling and trading amongst other nations it's a given at this point with how global our economy and trade system have become. I will veto any spending bill that would lead to a deficit. All right. Depending on, I may agree with that. It depends on what the bill is for, I suppose, and if we're making cuts in any other areas that are necessary to prop up those policies. But sure. And veto any debt ceiling increase. Okay. I don't necessarily disagree with that. There are definitely cuts we could make to get rid of the debt, to avoid any sort of increase to the debt ceiling increase. I will give every cabinet secretary a specific spending reduction target to meet and hold them accountable. For what industries? For what portions of our government are you going to be doing this for? But sure, we'll see where this leads. But sure, we do need to spend less as a country on certain things. There is simply no excuse for sticking our children and grandchildren with the bill for these bipartisan bloated budgets. I can't necessarily say I disagree with that. Neutrality and peace. Let's move on to the next one. Turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral. We are very much an imperialist nation, and we do spend the majority of our time kind of playing the world's police when we don't need to. There are certainly certain areas in the world where we are needed, where it is appropriate for our military to be present. Oh, there's a read more. Let's go back. We're just focusing on the bullet points here because there's another post made by Joe Jorgensen, or at least somebody that found these answers that I want to go over with. But anyway, with the military force to defend America's shores and soil against any foreign invaders or attackers, we have that already. We spend more on our military than in the next 10 countries in the world combined. So, yes, we have that. Protected by an armed citizenry and a military laser focused on defending America. I mean, we have that. I mean, we don't really have anything in the manner of organized militias like the Founding Fathers intended when they wrote the Second Amendment in the Constitution. But yes, we own half of the guns in the world, and that's not a bad thing. Perhaps curtail who among us may own those guns, such as mentally ill people. But yes, we already have this. No U.S. involvement in foreign wars. Depends on the war, but yeah, I mean, if Russia and China start invading the EU, yeah, we should fucking get involved, but we don't need to be involved in the Middle East. We don't. There has been turmoil there for centuries, and America being there playing Big Brother is not going to solve that. It's just not. And we've been there for 20 years, plus Desert Storm before that, and what's really changed? Honestly, we've gone from Al-Qaeda to ISIS, and the current administration claims they've defeated ISIS. I don't know the validity to that, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt because I haven't looked into it, so I don't know enough to make a decision on that. Bring home our 200,000 plus American military personnel stationed in foreign countries. Yes. There are certain areas where we should be, but again, I agree with that. No U.S. military aid to foreign governments. Does that mean just fuck our allies then? I mean, we are allied with the majority of, like, Europe, and I guess Russia would be our tentative ally. It depends on who you ask, I suppose. But by and large, the majority of the world, or at least the developed world, if you want to use that phrase, would be considered our allies. If they get invaded or attacked, we definitely should be coming to their aid because they would do the same for us, no doubt. No U.S. blockades or embargoes of non-military trade. I don't necessarily disagree with that. My ideal world would be moving towards a global society and a global economy, the eventual elimination of borders. And I know this can't happen overnight and maybe not even in my lifetime, but the eventual abolition of borders, so that we as a human race can come together and focus on what we need to do as a species to, one, better the planet, and two, advance collectively. The divisivism that we've had throughout the entirety of mankind has led to some of the greatest setbacks in world history. I understand that World War II was one of the greatest periods of technological and economic innovation and advancement in the world, but millions of people died to make that happen because we couldn't get along. We are one species. We shouldn't be acting like we're all different just because of the location on the planet that you happen to be born. So yes, we should be able to trade with other countries freely, and we should be able to move to other countries freely as well. So I agree, in part. Healthcare. I think this is where we're going to depart from my agreement with her in any facet. Republican and Democrat policies for the last 50 years are the reason healthcare has become so expensive. Yes. Namely our capitalist view of healthcare as a commodity rather than a basic human right. Their latest proposals to fix healthcare will further micromanage your doctors and restrict your access to care while failing to solve the underlying problem. Are you referring to the current administration changes, or are you referring to moving towards a single payer healthcare plan? Because the former, absolutely. The latter, no, you're fucking wrong, and there's data to prove that. Just look at the UK and Canada without looking at it through the lens of somebody on the right wing. Um, you don't have these issues in those countries. The only real waiting periods that you come across are for elective surgeries and surgeries that you're not going to immediately die without having. So you're wrong on that. Let's see. They only differ whether this should be done by private insurance companies or government bureaucrats. I suppose, yes, the government should definitely provide healthcare to its citizens. I mean, we pay a fuck ton in taxes, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. The majority of them go to the military and bases in foreign nations that we don't need. But yes, we pay enough in taxes that the government should be able to guarantee healthcare as a human right to every single citizen in this country. I mean, we are the most developed and the richest country in the history of mankind. The fact that we cannot guarantee healthcare to all of our citizens, yet other developed nations can, is absolutely ridiculous to me. This is the exact opposite of what needs to be done. So the two options, private or public options, the only two are the exact opposite of what needs to be done. What the fuck do you mean, Jojo? We can reduce the cost of healthcare by 75%. I'd like to see the data on that. By allowing real price competition and by substantially reducing government and insurance company paperwork. You realize it's not the paperwork that's the problem with our healthcare industry. It's that it's a for-profit system. Meaning that the people at the top that make the decisions about how our country is going to be run and run these industries are maximizing profit every step of the way and every chance they get. It has nothing to do with fucking paperwork. This will make healthcare affordable to most Americans. I don't give a fuck about making healthcare affordable to most Americans. I want to make healthcare accessible to all Americans, because if you can't afford it, it's not accessible. While also reducing the cost of legacy programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA. And the VA. So, that's a lot of bullshit. But if we move to a single-payer healthcare system, we wouldn't need Medicare, Medicaid, or the VA, because every single person that lives in this country would have access to the kind of services that Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA handles all across this country. We have the infrastructure to do it. We're just too fucking greedy to actually allow people to access it. Because people at the top want to make money off of sick people and injured people. And if you can't pay them, fuck you, go die somewhere else away from me, is essentially what they're saying to everybody that can't afford it. Moving on. I will work to remove government barriers to replacing coal-burning and oil-burning power plants in the United States with safe, non-polluting, high-tech nuclear power plants. I agree with that. Nuclear power is one of the best alternative sources of energy that we have, at least as far as we've been able to figure out. Nuclear power is safe. If built with modern technology. The majority of the nuclear power plants that we have in this country, and why people find it so scary, is because they were built in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. They are 70 years old at this point with outdated safety techniques and outdated technology. We need to modernize the nuclear power plants in this country, because we would be able to give clean, renewable energy at significantly lower costs to everybody. if we move to nuclear power. And allow off-grid use of solar powers. I'll get that, yeah. I'm behind that. Allow people to use solar power. Most states allow that, but there are some that don't. Yes. You can go ahead and put on your mic if you'd like, if you want to comment. I don't have a problem with that. Most pollution is generated... Oh, I skipped something. Worldwide, I'm sorry. Worldwide, I believe we need to consider all scientific economic knowledge to care for our environment, not cherry-pick data to support a predetermined outcome. We're not cherry-picking data.
She doesn't believe that climate change is a thing.
What's that?
She said she doesn't believe that climate change is a thing.
I would not be surprised, but I don't know. I haven't seen that as of right now. We aren't cherry picking data. The data is the data is pretty well set on both climate change and the options that we have available to us for energy reform. The problem is oil and coal barons control our government, or at least the right-leaning side of our government. And that's why we won't move away from them, because they make too much money and they don't want to stop making so much money. Let's see. Most pollution is generated in developing countries. Not our fault. It doesn't matter that 70% of the world's pollution is produced by 100 companies, which are predominantly in America, China, and India. That doesn't matter. Let's just blame the poor people and the not white people. I see. Fantastic. So reducing pollution worldwide requires cost-efficient zero-emission energy sources like nuclear. I'm sorry, if they're a developing nation, they can't do nuclear. They don't have the technology or the infrastructure to support that.
Yeah, for real.
We have that in America. We have the ability to do that in America. We have plenty of nuclear power plants here. But if a nation is developing and modernizing and industrializing, they don't have the resources available to them to produce nuclear power.
Yeah, that's
So,
like telling a homeless person to just build their own house.
Yeah. Yeah,
build
exactly.
It. Why not?
Exactly. So that's kind of a fucky way of looking at things. Let's blame the brown people so that we don't have to deal with our own issues. Great. That's awesome.
She doesn't like...
She clearly has a problem with minorities, but we'll get into that later. Social Security. Do you trust politicians to keep their promises? I don't. Nobody does. They're politicians. They are owned by massive corporations. They're not beholden to anybody but the people that fund them. That's why we need to get money out of politics. But anyway, that's a different topic. They spent every cent in the Social Security Trust Fund on other spending, leaving behind worthless IOUs. Yes, we keep borrowing against it. Which political party do you think keeps doing that? It's not the blue one, I'll tell you that. Other countries have successfully replaced their government-run systems with individual retirement accounts safe from greedy politicians. I mean, if we move to a more of a socialist economy, a market socialism style economy, where the workers own the means of production and every single business in this country was a worker-owned co-op that could implement something very akin to the pension plan that was very popular until the last 30 years, where if you worked somewhere for 20 years, you would continue getting a paycheck because our economy could support that. If we moved to a worker-owned co-op style economy, we could get rid of Social Security because you wouldn't have greedy billionaires and near trillionaires like Jeff Bezos siphoning off so much of the revenue from their companies. That capital, that revenue, could be invested in the workers themselves and in retirement programs for them. So let's move to a market socialist economic system, and we can do exactly what you're talking about, Joe. But I don't think you have that in mind. I really, really don't. As president, you're not going to be president, honey, I'm sorry. As president, I would work to implement a solution like the Cato Institute's 6.2% solution, which would allow any American the opportunity to opt out of the current system while making the current system fiscally stable for those who choose to remain. You see, the problem is if you give Americans the opportunity to opt out of the system, everybody that's my age and younger would for sure opt out of paying into Social Security because we would never get a payout from it. We would be paying into a system that we would never reap the benefits from. I would much rather, like I said earlier, move to a market socialist economy with worker-owned co-ops so that we could fund private pension plans. And the government wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. But allowing people to opt out of paying into the system, that's not going to fix anything, and it's going to defund the system insanely. But that's just me. All right, trade and immigration. Let's plug that in. The freedom to trade and travel are fundamental to human liberty. As American citizens, we should be free to travel anywhere we choose and to buy and sell anywhere in the world. I agree. Let's get rid of borders and move to a globalist economy. Fantastic. As president, I would use my constitutional authority to eliminate trade barriers and tariffs, and work to repeal arbitrary quotas on the number of people who can legally enter the United States to work, visit, and reside. I actually agree with this. We should not have a quota of the maximum number of people that we can take from a given country. We can only take so many people from Mexico, and after that, no more. Not this year. Which is why we're still processing applications from Mexico from the 90s. Which is why it takes so fucking long to legally immigrate to this country. Which is part of the reason why we have an illegal immigration problem at our southern border. So I agree, Joe. I agree. Criminal justice reform. Don't worry, we're almost done. We're going to get to the juicy stuff later. In just a minute, and I'm going to tear her to pieces. Criminal justice reform. I am appalled that the United States ranks #1 in the world for having the highest percentage of people imprisoned. Of course. Me too. Do you think there are reasons for that? Do you think that it might have something to do with the fact that this country was built for white people? And if you weren't white, you were kind of fucked for about 300-ish years or more? Think that has anything to do with it? I bet you don't, but I digress. I'm also appalled that the federal government permits police to seize a person's assets without first convicting them of a crime and then keeping most of the assets seized. I agree. Civil forfeiture is legalized theft by the state. It's bullshit and is wrong. This is literally highway robbery. Yes, I agree. As president, I will use my constitutional authority. Why does she always say this? My constitutional authority. You better respect my authority. What are you, fucking Cartman? I will use my constitutional authority to end federal civil asset forfeiture prior to conviction and pardon persons convicted of nonviolent, victimless crimes. Okay. I will also work with Congress to end the failed war on drugs and other victimless crime laws. Fantastic, especially since those laws and the war on drugs disproportionately affect black people and other minorities in this country, but I don't think that's why you have that in mind. I think you just think we spend too much on prisons, but we'll get to that later. Poverty. From 1959 to 1969, nice, the poverty rate was nearly cut in half, while the government did little to address poverty. Yes, because of regulations that the government placed on the economy, which prohibited CEO, the highest paid employee at a company, from making more than 40 times the lowest paid employee. You think maybe that has something to do with it? I do, because they got rid of those. And now you have fucking Jeff Bezos, you have Elon Musk, and you have Bill Gates and their contemporaries, which make thousands more than the lowest paid employee at the company. I worked at a company where I made a decent wage. I made $40,000 a year. The CEO made $40,000 a day. She made 365 times more than me. That's bullshit. Again, worker-owned co-ops and a market socialist system would fix those problems. But anyway. However, after the war on poverty was fully implemented in the early 70s, progress stopped. I wonder why. I wonder who came into office in the 70s that got rid of those regulations. 50 years of federal anti-poverty programs, zero impact. Okay. I'm not even going to get into that. Government anti-poverty poverty programs don't work. Yes, but regulations on businesses do, which had the greatest impact at reducing poverty. When those were cut, you saw a massive spike in poverty and income inequality in this country. The real cure for poverty is a vibrant economy that generates plentiful jobs and high wages. I wonder what kind of economy we could move to that would fix the problem entirely. But again, you don't have that in mind. These are very pie-in-the-sky ideas from a libertarian. Reducing regulations would only exacerbate the problem because reducing regulations were the ones that caused the problem in the first place. But the real cure for poverty is in a vibrant economy that generates plentiful jobs and high wages combined with an affordable cost of living. How are you going to fix that without regulation, Joe? You're supposed to be a libertarian, Joe.
Yeah, Joe.
As president, I will work to eliminate policies that cripple economic growth. I wonder what kind of policies she would work to eliminate. Because she doesn't elucidate on any of them. But I guarantee you it's going to be environmental regulations so that the coal and fossil fuel industries can continue raping our planet for profit. But she doesn't list that here. So, and there's no links here for me to look at to see what regulations she's talking about. There's no read more like there was up here. So I can't even tell you which ones, but I have a feeling. I will give special attention to regulations driving up the cost of housing and healthcare. Okay? As well as those creating barriers to creating new businesses or entering professions. So regulations are good for certain things, but not for other things. I thought you were a libertarian. Being a libertarian, you should be against all regulation. Which, by the way, I'm not a libertarian. I don't believe that no regulation is the best. There are certainly things that need to be regulated in this country, and those keep getting slashed day by day, especially under the current administration. Finally, I will work to repeal laws and regulations that prevent individuals and charitable organizations from helping those in need. What the fuck does that even mean? But whatever. Education. There's more I could go into, but again, she doesn't elucidate what those programs are or what those regulations are. So I can't even fucking talk about them. Education. The Department of Education has failed. Wrong. In 40 years since the Department of Education was created, the government spending on education has skyrocketed. In college, yes, because we allowed federal loans to be made readily available for students, so colleges started jacking up the price of college tuition, housing, room, and board because the government was footing the bill rather than the government straight up paying for it and regulating the costs. So, no, the Department of Education has not failed. Students used to be able to work their way through college and graduate debt-free. Yes! But our education system, our secondary education system in this country works as a for-profit industry. Education and healthcare, which are currently for-profit industries, should not be for-profit. They should be they should be provided free of cost at point of service to all Americans. That's the only way we're going to be able to compete globally, is by having an educated workforce and by having a healthy workforce. If we don't have either of those things, we're going to continue sliding back on the charts. If you're all about American superiority, those are the things we need. As president, I will work to eliminate the Department of Education and return control of education to where it belongs with parents, teachers, and students. Are you one of those weird homeschool nuts that thinks that public education is poisoning the mind of American children. I was raised by one. The outcomes are not good. It took me a long time to recover. Taxes. Taxes are never voluntary, okay? They are always paid under the threat of punishment. I mean, that's what taxes are. If you fail to pay what the government says you owe, you can be fined, have your wages garnished, assets seized, or even go to prison. Yes, you have to pay taxes. We live in a society, and there are many things that are provided to us, not nearly enough, but there are many things that are provided to us free of cost at point of service, which is why you have to pay taxes. Do you think the roads that you drive on every day get built for free? Do you think the firefighters come to your house and put out the fire for free?
Yeah.
Taxes are important. We just need to figure out what we're spending that tax money on and prioritize other things other than war.
Please.
Voting for more government spending inevitably leads to higher taxes to pay for it. Yes, or reallocation of current funds. Ugh. Now or in the future, as president, I will work tirelessly to slash federal spending, make government much smaller, and let you keep what you earn. Whose taxes are you going to slash, Joe? Are they going to be mine and other poor people? Because I have a feeling
Because she hates poor people.
it's going to be the super rich, and the poor people are going to continue footing the bill. I have a sneaking suspicion that's what's going to happen. So we've reached the end of the issues page of her website, but I want to bring your attention over here to this Facebook post that goes over a bunch of questions that Jo Jorgensen was asked about policies and issues that she supports or doesn't support. These things made my skin crawl. Let's take a look at this. So, should government increase spending on public transportation? No. Why? Poor people have to get places too, Joe.
Yeah, not everyone can own a car.
Yeah, exactly. Not everybody can own a vehicle. Not everybody can afford gasoline, insurance, or the fucking car itself.
Maintenance for it, and like we didn't have a warranty on our car, we would not be able to afford the maintenance on it.
Oh yeah, I've had to have my clutch repaired twice, and it's going to be a third time before I even hit 100,000 miles because there's a recall on my vehicle. And without the warranty, I would have been fucked a year ago. Thankfully, I had one. But there are millions and millions of people in this country that don't. Poor people are people, Joe. I'm just saying poor people are people. Pardon me. Let's get back to this. Should employers be required to pay men and women the same salary for the same job? Of course. No! The government should never determine what a private business should pay employees.
So yeah, just because I have a vag, I should be paid less than you for doing the same thing.
So, despite the fact that the wage gap is not 77 cents for a dollar, there is a disparity. And getting rid of the regulations that enforce equal pay, that disparity is going to return. Because, yes, women work less hours because they have children. Biological males are not capable of doing that. Biological females have to perpetuate the species. Not every woman, you don't have to, but it is a necessity for the species to continue that children are made. So women have to work less hours because, I'm sorry, you cannot expect a woman to go back to work right after giving birth. So they have to take time off. That time off should be paid.
And they shouldn't be paid less the rest of the time because they have children.
Exactly. I mean, we're the only country, the only developed nation in the world that does not guarantee paid maternity leave
And
or
other
paternity leave.
countries guarantee months of it.
Yeah, you would be lucky if your company offers it.
Yeah. And if they do, it's usually only like 6 weeks.
Yeah. So, despite the fact that it's not 77 cents and there's data out to support that, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. There is a disparity. It's not as big as most people try to make it out to be, which kind of why it pisses me off when they throw that number out, because it is easy to point out that it's wrong, and it kind of invalidates the movement and what you're trying to push if you can easily debunk it. But there is a disparity. This kind of shit that she is advocating for would make the problem worse.
Way worse.
Should the government enforce a stay-at-home order to combat coronavirus? No. Yep, fuck the poor. Go back to work, you cretin, and cut my hair and make my pizza. I am wealthy and have sick leave, and I can stay home. So, I'm going to do that, but fuck you for being poor. You deserve to die, is essentially what she's saying. Fuck the poor. Yeah, fuck the poor, apparently. No, the government should definitely enforce a stay-at-home order to prevent the spread of a deadly virus that is ravaging our country. Over 120,000 people have died in 4 months since this virus actually took hold in this country. 120,000. The government should enforce a stay-at-home order and supplement all people's incomes with basic income, the way Canada has, for the duration of the pandemic, so that our economy doesn't collapse, but also so people can pay their bills without having to go to work, risking their health and the health of their loved ones and the people they work with. This is kind of why libertarians kind of make my skin crawl, because they don't care about anyone as long as you're free. As long as you can do whatever you want, fuck everybody else. Should there be more restrictions on the current process of purchasing a gun? No, Washington has it pretty figured out. Washington State. There's a waiting period, and even though I have had a federal background check for my job, that's much more extensive than the one that I needed to purchase any of the 3 guns that are in my house. I didn't have a problem with it. Sure, it was kind of annoying, but I understood why. And they also have regulations that if you've been admitted to a mental hospital, you cannot purchase a gun in Washington State. So actually, I'm gonna disagree with this slightly. I think it should be nationwide. You need mental health evaluations, because I don't believe people with mental health issues, severe mental health issues, should be able to purchase firearms, because almost every single one of these mass shootings that we've seen across the country, the person had mental health issues. It's a pandemic in our country that we refuse to address until people can get adequate assistance and help for those mental health issues. Maybe keep the guns out of their hands, because so many people have died because of it. That's just my point of view. There are people that I know personally, people in my family, and then I've said this to their face: I don't believe you should own a gun. That's just the way I feel. But as long as you are sane, not a criminal, not on a no-fly list or a terrorism watch list, have as many guns as you want in whatever caliber you want, and have as much ammunition as you can purchase. I think arming the proletariat is a very important thing. The average citizen in this country, the average working citizen in this country, should definitely be armed. One, to defend themselves from each other, but 2, against a tyrannical government. Kind of like what we're seeing right now with these protests. But that's a different conversation. So I disagree with her on this. Nationwide, it should be more modeled after what Washington has. Should the government give tax credits and subsidies to the wind power industry? No. Because fuck clean energy. Just keep raping the planet. I will give her this. She's a big advocate for nuclear energy, so maybe that's what she means. Don't fund wind power, fund nuclear. It's more efficient and cleaner. Sure, I will give her that. But we should still give tax credits to all industries of renewable energy and stop giving billions of dollars a year to the fossil fuel industry that is destroying our planet. Stop doing that and give it to the clean energy people. Otherwise, we won't have a planet to live on. Should states be allowed to display the Confederate flag on government property? Yes, each state should have the right to display any flag they choose. No, fuck you, they were traitors. You're not going to display the Nazi flag on a federal building or a state building in Germany. You should not be able to display the Confederate flag on state or government buildings in our country. They were traitors. They seceded from the Union, said they weren't United States citizens anymore, that they were a different country, and said fuck you to the good old US of A. No. The Confederate flag should be banned from state and federal government buildings. If the private citizen wants to fly the traitor flag and tell the world how much of a racist piece of shit they are, First Amendment, they have the right to. I have the right to call them a racist, white supremacist piece of shit for flying that flag, but they have the right to do so. Kind of makes it easier to spot the shitbags in your society, if you ask me. But no, the government should not be endorsing in any way people that betrayed our country and seceded. No. Do you support single-payer healthcare system? She says no. I absolutely support it. There is no reason why our country could not do that and do it better than other countries, because the people on the right love to point out all of these flaws in the Canadian and the European healthcare systems. And yes, while they do have flaws, the flaws they point out don't fucking exist. They're just straw men to make you think, oh, big government bad, single-payer healthcare system bad. Should immigrants be required to learn English? No. They should. I mean, you should learn English. Most people speak it here, and it'll help you. But no,
learn it eventually.
Yeah, you'll slowly. If I move to Japan, I mean, I took some Japanese in high school, but if I move to Japan, which is a very different language than English, if I lived there long enough, I would eventually pick up the language at least enough to get by. What does she say? No, but remove multilingual translations from government documents and services. Yeah, this woman definitely hates brown people. She hates. Are you a white supremacist, Joe? Because that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from you. Make it so that people that don't speak English, e.g., non-white people, can't make their way through our legal system, through our government systems. That's kind of racist, Joe. That's kind of racist. Ugh. Should the government increase environmental regulations to prevent climate change? She's going to say no, isn't she? No, remove subsidies from all forms of energy production, allowing emissions-free nuclear power a chance to compete on a level playing field. Remove subsidies from the fossil fuel industry and the industries that are killing our climate. But yes, we should definitely increase environmental regulations to choke out the coal and oil barons out of our country and out of the market. Because they are destroying the planet. Because they don't care, because they are rich enough to survive climate change, to survive global warming. They have the capital to do so, but the average person in this country does not. You see, you have mentally inept people like Ben Shapiro going on stage and saying that, well, if the sea levels rise, people in Florida will just sell their homes and move elsewhere as his solution. Sell those homes to who? Ben, sell those homes to who?
Does he actually believe that?
Yes, he has actually said that. I've watched the video. He has actually said that if the sea levels rise, that people in Florida will just sell their homes and move. And I ask him again, who are they going to sell a home that is underwater too. Nobody is going to buy it. The government is going to have to bail those people out. But of course, Benny Boy and Joe Jorgensen here are against big government bailouts and actually supporting the citizens that actually pay into the system and actually supply the surplus value and labor to our economy.
These people.
Should sanctuary cities receive federal funding? No city should receive federal funding for any reason.
For any reason.
Joe, you're fucking stupid. No city should receive federal funding for any reason. So when Katrina hit New Orleans, the federal government should have been like, you figure it out and let thousands more die than already did. The idea that sanctuary cities are a necessity in this country it disgusts me. The fact that people vilify people from other nations to the point that there are certain cities that have been like, hey, this is a safe space to hide from ICE disgusts me. We shouldn't hate people from other countries that contribute to our economy, have a lower rate of crime, and all around generally better people than the people that were born here. We should not vilify them and try our hardest to keep them out of our country. Again, remove borders, move to a global society. That is where humanity is headed. Rip the Band-Aid off. Should transgender athletes be allowed to compete in athletic events? No. Trans people are people. Trans rights are human rights. Saying that because you have gender dysphoria and have transitioned to another, to the opposite gender, or to the opposite sex, precludes you from competing in athletic events is ludicrous. It boggles my mind that people can have such reductive views and such, oh my god, can think as low as they do about trans people in this country or worldwide. There's no reason that they should be kept out of athletic events. Especially with the advent of puberty blockers given to children that are showing signs of gender dysphoria and the possibility of being trans, which the vast majority of them, and the data backs this up, do end up transitioning to the opposite sex, making those resources more available to them so that a trans woman does not experience or go through the bodily changes of a male puberty would eliminate that problem entirely. Moving on. Should the U.S. remain in NATO? No. Fuck you. Oh my god. She is very much a national isolationist. She wants us to be an island unto ourselves, and it seems for the rich white man. Which is weird because she's a woman, but she doesn't have a problem paying women less. She hates the poor, and statistically speaking, the poor are populated by people of color. And she thinks we shouldn't be involved with other countries. We shouldn't allow people in, and we should not support our allies. We should not remain in NATO. Like what you're an isolationist, Joe.
She should just go lock herself in a cabin somewhere.
I'm having a really hard time not using the R word at this woman. That's how strongly she makes me feel. She is inept. She is so fucking stupid. Should political candidates be required to release their recent tax returns to the public? No, their income is none of our business. Yeah, because, if they're acquiring capital through corrupt means, that would not be something that the American populace should know about. I shouldn't know. I don't need to know if the next president of the United States is in organized crime or is involved in insider trading, or is, a billionaire that doesn't give a shit about the average Joe or Jane in this country. That's not important. Yes, they should be required to. You are running for the highest office in the land. We should know everything about you, including your finances, to know where you get your money from. Because where you get your money from informs a lot on the kind of person that you are. If you get your money from illegal activity, chances are you're a criminal. If you get your money from trading stocks and gambling on the stock markets, chances are you're a piece of shit that does not give a crap about the average person in this country. Should the U.S. withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement? Yes.
No.
Why? No! The U.S. The Paris the climate agreement is not enforceable. They're not going to shit on us for not. They're just going to encourage us to meet these goals that they've set out to try and save our planet. What? Why would we leave? I mean, I know we already have, but why? Why did we leave and why should we leave? There is no reason to leave. And we have every reason to adhere as close as we can to the climate agreement for the good of mankind. And if you really want to be an asshole about it, because you can't make very much money on a dying planet, Joe. Should universities provide trigger warnings and safe spaces for students? No. Why not? It's a room. Fuck off. Should there be a 5-year ban on White House and congressional officials from becoming lobbyists after they leave government? No. That's how you get corruption, Joe. That's how you get corruption, Joe. We've seen it. We've seen it. Fuck. Please tell me we're almost done. Oh, should businesses be required to have women on their board of directors? No. Why does she hate women so much? Why does she hate women so much? You realize that...
I understand, like, why... Or that she doesn't want to tell businesses what to do. But if they weren't required to have women on their boards, they wouldn't. Because the boards are filled with sexist old men.
Yeah, the major companies in this country are all... run by crusty white old men that are
views.
With ancient views, with ancient sexist views that believe that women should be barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen. Those are the kind of people that run the biggest corporations in this country. Maybe not Jeff Bezos, but the Waltons sure fucking are. Precluding men or not requiring companies to include women in the conversation would be a step back. It would keep women out of those positions where they can influence companies and advocate for the proper treatment of women. If you knew that the CEO or there was a woman on the board of directors, maybe you might think twice before making that sexist comment at the water cooler in your office. Because I guarantee you that's happened to the woman that's on the board of directors, and she's going to come down on you like a ton of fucking bricks if she finds out about it. But a crusty old white guy? That's normal, baby. He's not going to care. Hey, we did it back in my day, Sonny. Mm-hmm. He's not going to care. I guarantee you a fucking woman would.
And women are people, too.
Oh, yeah,
just
women...
like trans people are people... Gay people are people, mm-hmm. Black people, brown people, they're all people.
Yeah. We should just, trans rights are human rights, women's rights are human rights, the rights of minorities, they're fucking human rights, Joe, just letting you know. Poor people, those are human rights, just so you know, Joe, poor people are people, women are people, trans people are people, black people are people. I don't know why she's having a hard time realizing that. So.
I don't know, but that makes me angry.
Yeah.
Next. She makes me angry.
Yeah, I kind of was like, yeah, I could vote for JoJo. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure 2020, hell yeah. No. Fuck no, not after this shit.
For JoJo.
No, this woman is not JoJo. She's fucking Dio. Jesus Christ. I know you don't get that reference. It's a JoJo reference. Should the government prevent megacorporates? And by the way, I haven't seen the whole thing, so if there's a plot twist at the end, don't shit on me for it. Should the government prevent mega mergers of corporations that could potentially control a large percentage of market share within its industry? No. Why are you pro monopoly, Joe? I want you to, ladies and gentlemen at home, ask yourself, do you have a whole lot of options with your internet service provider in your area? Because I only know of one that serves my address. It's Comcast. Frontier is in the region, but it ain't here. I have one company that I can go to for internet. One company that I can go to for television. I don't buy television, but I just get internet. But I have one company that I can go to. And the problem with that is it gets rid of any incentive for any sort of competition. And competition in a capitalist economy is the only thing that benefits the consumer. Comcast can charge as much as they fucking want, and they know people are going to pay it because in 2020, you need internet. I know, hashtag current year, but you need internet in today's day and age. Without any sort of competition, you get companies like Comcast. You get companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is one of, like, I think it's four insurance providers in the country. And depending on your region, that's the only option available to you, which is why healthcare is so expensive and why you have such a hard time finding a doctor.
And it's like pharmaceuticals, like the people who sell things like insulin. My mom needs insulin. And even with my dad's amazing insurance...
Your father works for the state, which is why he has such good insurance. I won't specify
county.
where. Oh, he works for the county.
Yes. But either way, they can barely keep up with the amount of insulin my mom needs.
You want to know something that's fucked up about the insulin industry? Insulin without insurance is, I think it's like $300 a vial or something like that.
Like $350, I think.
Because of COVID, the government has stepped in and said, hey, you can only charge $35 nationwide for insulin, which means they've had the power to do that this entire time. Yeah. They've just fucking chosen not to.
Because they're the ones that control the industry, which is the same with these that internet bullshit. Like, if you let them control the entire market, they're gonna make things outrageous and unobtainable to normal people.
Mm-hmm. What's sad is 25% of our country lives below the federal poverty line. And the general consensus about that is the federal poverty line is way too fucking low. The federal poverty line is $25,000 a year. You cannot support a family on that.
No.
You cannot have, even as a single person, you cannot afford a one-bedroom apartment if you live anywhere other than a flyover state, which is not where most people live.
And you can't really find jobs in flyover states.
No, that's why they're flyover states. That's why their population is so low, is because their job industry is so sparse in those areas. So sure, you could make $25,000 a year and live relatively comfortably in the middle of fucking nowhere, Texas or Wyoming or Nebraska. But you can't do that in any highly populated area.
In Washington, no. In Washington, we struggled living in a one-bedroom apartment while you made $40,000 a year.
Yeah, I made $40,000 a year, and we were scraping by, and ended up having to move out of that location before my lease was up because I couldn't afford rent.
We were in the cheapest one-bedroom apartment we could find because that's what we could afford.
Yeah, we were...
And we were in the worst area that we could have been in.
Yep.
In our entire county, we were in the worst area, the most dangerous area.
What was this the number that they threw at us? Something like 80% of the arrests came from that street we lived on?
Yes.
Yeah. And we lived there and we couldn't afford it, and we made $40,000 a year. And we did not live in Seattle.
No, we did not live in Seattle. We lived 45 minutes from Seattle.
Yeah,
half an hour or so, but not in Seattle or really near it.
Yeah, we weren't even in one of the rich areas in Washington. But because so many people are living in abject poverty, even if they're above the federal poverty line, which the consensus is way too fucking low anyway, a quarter of our population lives below that. So with mega corporations, they can price people out of commodities, which is kind of why I advocate for the decommodification of basic human necessities such as food, healthcare, housing, electricity, water. Those
Like
education, those 6 things should not be viewed as commodities and should be supplied.
even like feminine products. We were so broke back in the day that I would be thanking God for the fact that my periods came once a year.
And what's sad is we couldn't even get that treated because we couldn't afford the medical care to do so. We were benefiting from a health problem you had that we couldn't afford to get fixed.
That made it so we could not have a child for
Yeah.
6.5 years.
Yeah. But because so many people are poor and you have mega mergers of these corporations that create a legal monopoly, because there are other internet service providers, just to use them as an example, in the country, if Comcast is your only option, if Cox is your only option, if Frontier, God, is your only option, I am so sorry if Frontier is your only option. God, their service is awful. I used to work there. The only place where they even have halfway decent service is if you're in a FiOS area, which is like a handful of places. Not the point. But these are legal, even though they're the only industry in the region. So there is no competition, which means they can charge whatever the fuck they want. So yes, they should prevent mega mergers. Even boycotts. Like if you were like, Lay's potato chips does something you don't like, I'm going to boycott Lay's. Well, the thing is, half the shit that you buy in this country, or half the other commodities that you purchase, are potentially owned by their parent company, because that Lay's is owned by a parent company that is owned by a parent company that is one of the 4 main companies that owns like 80% of our economy. So boycotting them is useless. So yes, we need regulation to prevent these kinds of things. We spent way too much time on this one topic. Should internet service providers be allowed to speed up access to popular websites that pay higher rates and at the expense of slowing down access to less popular websites? She says yes. No. That would de-incentivize the free market, which I don't advocate for, but if you're starting a new business and you can't afford to pay these premiums of, I want my website to be fast, people aren't going to go to you. They're going to go to Amazon. If you make tchotchkes, if you make cups, and you're starting a coffee cup business, and you're just starting out and you can't afford to make your internet run faster, people in our day and age are impatient. I'm not going to wait for a page to load when I could go to Amazon and it'll load instantly and buy a cup that looks the same. No. That's going to stifle our broken economic system. There should be a limit on the amount of money a candidate can receive from a donor. No, this is a violation of free speech. Fuck no, it's not, and fuck you, Joe.
It's not
That is
free speech when people are paying millions.
Paying money.
Millions.
Paying money is not a form of free speech. I don't express my freedom of speech by paying my car note. That's not a form of free speech, and that's how you get the unbridled level of corruption we have in our federal governments. By these donors just financing and owning politicians. The fact that the fossil fuel industry essentially owns the right and the pharmaceutical industry essentially owns the left is a problem, and it's because these corporations can pose as a single donor and donate vast sums of money to candidates that they want in power, so that when they get in office, they'll toe the line of what that company wants, because we financed you and you want to run again. We aren't going to pay you if you don't do what we want. We need to get money out of politics. There should not be any donations. What I believe should happen is that political races should be federally funded. You are allocated a certain amount of money. And that will go to campaign speeches. That would go to campaign ads, both online and on television. Um, and you wouldn't get any extra funding. It should be illegal to receive extra funding from any other source other than that stipend that you were given to run for government. That's the way Britain does it. That's the way Canada does it. That's the way the entirety of the EU does it. And they don't have the corruption that we have in America. Because we allow large corporations to donate vast sums of money to the political candidate that they want in office because they know they're going to vote for what that company wants. You're advocating for corruption, Joe, in government, which you claim to hate as a libertarian. Do you support the use of hydraulic fracking to extract oil and natural gases? No, it's terrible for the environment. Yes, I hold. Yes, and hold fracking companies responsible for the damages. No. Fracking is one of the worst things that is going on for our environment at the current moment. One of the worst and most damaging ways to extract oil and natural gases from the crust. It's terrible. It's fucking awful for the environment. So yeah, hold the companies responsible for the damages, but don't fucking endorse them. Why do you hate poor people, Joe? I know you're rich enough to be able to withstand global warming if it doesn't completely destroy the planet, but poor people can't. Why do you hate poor people, Joe? Should the U.S. remain in the United Nations? No. Oh my God. We have allies for a reason. Leaving the United Nations would take us away, would lead us in the wrong direction towards the ultimate goal that I feel we should be working for, to unify unify us as a species globally. If we leave the United Nations, it would be a step back, and we would be at the mercy of our largest enemies, China and Russia and North Korea. If those three came at us, unified as a single front, came at the United States, and we didn't have allies, we would be fucked. We would lose based on attrition. It doesn't matter how much funding we have, how many rockets we have, how many aircraft carriers we have. If they get boots on our soil, we're screwed. And so is Canada. And once we're gone, there's nothing stopping them from taking over the planet. And I don't particularly agree with their economic or political philosophies. We should fix America and make America better. Decommodifying basic human needs. Seizing the means of production and giving it to the workers through worker-owned co-ops. Universal health care. Things like that. So no, we should not leave the United Nations. Should foreign lobbyists be allowed to raise money for American elections? Yes. No, Joe. No. Why do you love corruption in government so fucking much? What the fuck is wrong with you? Should the federal government increase funding for health care for low-income individuals, Medicaid? No. Why do you hate the poor? Why do you hate the poor? And by extension, why do you hate minorities? Because they make up the largest portion of the poor in this country, per capita. Yeah, there are more poor white people. That's just because there's more white people in the country. Sure. Why do you hate the poor? And by extension, why do you hate minorities? Why? We should be investing in these. Or, actually, let's take this a different route. Yes, decrease funding for healthcare for low-income individuals and just supply it to everyone. That way you wouldn't have to worry about this problem. I think you're on the right track, Joe, but I know you don't mean it that way. Do you support the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, Obamacare? No, of course you don't, Joe, because you hate poor people, and you hate sick people, you hate disabled people, and you hate minorities, which are the people that benefit the most from that piece of legislation. Should the government stop construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline? No. Why do you hate brown people? Why do you hate minorities, Joe? The indigenous people of this country have been subjugated, genocided, raped, and given spittles of land compared to what they had before because of our imperialism. And we're continuing to do it. We are continuing. Why do you hate minorities, Joe? Why do you hate minorities? I don't understand it. Should health insurance be allowed to deny coverage to individuals to individuals who have pre-existing conditions? Excuse me. Yes, the government should not be involved in healthcare. You are absolutely wrong, and I believe the exact opposite of you on every point when it comes to healthcare. I'm not even going to go over this again. Should a business be able to deny service to a customer if the request conflicts with the owner's religious beliefs? Yes. I think she has a problem with gay people. And I really think she has a problem with trans people. Because those are the people being denied service. You're not seeing Muslims being denied service nationwide. You're not seeing atheists being denied service nationwide. It's members of the LGBT community. LGBTQ plus community, pardon me, that are being denied these services. Why do you hate gay people? Why do you hate trans people, Joe? I really would like to know the answer to this.
Why does
But
she hit poor people and anybody who's not white?
I don't understand it. Should the government regulate the prices on life-saving drugs? She's going to say no. Bingo! No, the FDA should abolish the price of the FDA should be abolished so the prices of all drugs go down. Oh my god. Abolish the Federal Drug Administration. Yeah, guys, just take hydroxychloroquine for COVID because nothing bad could happen. The FDA didn't approve it, but we should get rid of them, right? Right? Joe, why are you so dumb? Why are you so dumb? I don't even know what to say to that. Should producers be required to label genetically engineered food GMOs? No, the market should decide. No, there's no reason to label GMOs. GMOs are not scary. GMOs are not bad for you. They're just not. That's how we feed the country. I mean, we do throw away almost half of what we grow, but genetically modified organisms do help with our agriculture and do reduce the need for pesticides to be used in this country. So, yeah. There's no need to label them. I'll agree with that. Should the federal government fund universal preschool? No. Why do you hate the poor, Joe? Because I know rich people like you can afford to send their kids to preschool, but poor people like me and the vast majority of Americans cannot afford preschool if it's not federally funded, or at least state funded. So, why do you hate poor people, Joe? Why? Why do you hate poor people? Should a politician who has been formally convicted of a crime be allowed to run for office? Her answer is yes. Yes, because we should have criminals running this country. I mean, we already do, but they haven't been convicted of them. They're just allegations. So at least there's some gray area there. But if you've been convicted of crimes other than I would say, like, if you shoplifted when you were a minor or when you were very young, I don't think that should preclude you from running for office. But more serious crimes, yes, it absolutely should. Should the government continue to fund Planned Parenthood? No. I don't know how many times I've said this during this video, but why do you hate poor people, Joe? Why do you hate poor people? Because those are the people that use Planned Parenthood, Joe. Do you support the impeachment of Donald Trump? I have no comment on that particular question for reasons. Should the government require children to be vaccinated for preventable diseases? She says no, I say yes. If you do not vaccinate your children should be taken away from you. That is child abuse. Unless you have a valid medical reason, not a religious reason, not a personal reason. If you have a valid medical reason, then sure, don't vaccinate your kids. But if you do not have that, vaccinate your fucking children. You're putting everybody else at risk when you don't. Please tell me we're almost done. Do you support increasing taxes for the rich in order to reduce student interest rates for student loans? No, of course you don't. Joe, why do you hate poor people? Should the government raise the federal minimum wage? No, and eliminate all wage standards. I've said it too many times. I don't know if I can say it again. But sure, eliminate all wage standards, because under a market socialist economy where the workers own the means of production via a worker-owned co-op situation, you wouldn't need that. Because if the boss wants a raise, everybody gets a raise. That's how Winco works. The CEO of Winco makes $240,000 a year. The lowest paid employee at Winco makes only about 10 times less than that. And I don't think that's unreasonable. So yeah, under a market socialist economy, where the workers own the means of production, through worker-owned co-ops, sure, you don't need a minimum wage, because it wouldn't be necessary. Because you wouldn't have exploitative wage slave situations like we have all across this country. Should people on the no-fly list be banned from purchasing guns and ammunition? She says no. I say yes until you've been vetted and removed. Should teachers be allowed to carry guns in school? I agree. Yes, they should be allowed to. Not mandated, but should be allowed to. Should health insurance providers be required to offer free birth control? No, she says. I think they should be required to at least cover it. But again, under my ideal situation, you wouldn't have to worry about an insurance provider because healthcare would be free at point of purchase through a single payer system. So that would be a non-issue. Should the U.S. raise taxes on the rich? Of course you said no, Joe, because you hate the poor who already pay the vast majority of taxes in this country. Yes, tax the rich before we eat the fucking rich. Should the government increase funding for mental health research and treatment? No. Again, why do you hate poor people, Joe? Should the government support a separation of church and state by removing references to God on money, federal buildings, and national monuments? She says no. I say kind of. We should not be erecting new ones. But, despite the fact that Christianity is historically an oppressive ideology, we don't see that currently in America today, thank the gods. But there is history built into those monuments that are not, monuments to slavery. But there's history built into those monuments, and tearing down monuments that are not representative of oppression should not be torn down simply because it bears the name God, and that's coming from an atheist. Should researchers be allowed to use animals in testing the safety of drugs, vaccines, medical devices, and cosmetics? She says yes. I say depends on the animal. I'm sorry. I do. I don't think we should be testing on monkeys or dogs or cats or bunnies. We have to test on something before we test on people to make sure it's not going to outright kill them. As much as it's sad, they're mice. Use mice. Don't use dogs. Like, dogs have been proven to have human emotions. Cats have human emotions, mostly apathy and hatred. I'm just kidding. I have cats, so I get to say that. And monkeys are almost as evolved as we are. I mean, we evolved from a common ancestor, so I partially disagree with you. But cosmetics, no. Cosmetics, fuck no. There's no medical necessity for cosmetics. It's a social construct that women are required to use cosmetics. There's no reason for it. Do I think they're pretty? Sure. If you want to wear them as a woman because they make you feel beautiful, you should have every right to. But we shouldn't be testing them on animals. That's fucked. But anyway, this is going to be my first upload dealing with politics. Yeah, don't vote for Joe. Don't vote for Joe. I can't tell you who to vote for, but I can tell you who not to vote for, or at least one of them. Don't vote for Joe. Well, Joe Jorgensen. Vote for Joe Biden. Thanks. Feel free to follow me at any of my socials here up at the top. I have a Twitter account, on YouTube as well. I also have a Discord and an Instagram. Feel free to follow me at any of my socials. I'm either McRed2 or McRed2Official. If you're watching this on YouTube, drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Peace.